start recording. Okay.
Great. All right. Thank you. I'm going to call to order the San Luis Obispo County Flood Control and Water Conservation District, the Water Resources Advisory Committee, WRAC, for today, Wednesday, November 4th, 2020. I'm Andy Pease, and I am serving as your chair. So Brendan has been diligently recording attendance as folks have joined in. So we're trying to streamline that process. Are you ready to call out and determine quorum, Brendan?
Yes, I will call out everybody that I've seen and heard from, and then we can go through anyone who did not hear their name or the callers on the line for members and alternates. And then we can have everyone else introduce themselves. So I have Dennis Laux, District 1. I see Tom Gray, District 2. Christine Mulholland, Eric Greening, and David Chipping for Environmental at Large.
Yes.
Linda Chipping, Coastal San Luis RCD. Brent Burchett from the County Farm Bureau. I don't see Steve yet. Hillary Graves, Estrella El Pomar Creston Water District. Charles Bourbeau, City of Atascadero. Desi Lance, City of Grover Beach. Andy Pease, City of San Luis Obispo. Ray Dienzo, Cambria CSD. Craig Armstrong, Ed Eby from Napomo CSD, and Jeff English from Templeton CSD. And so are there any other members or alternates present who did not hear their name called?
Marcia Guthrie.
Shirley Gibson.
Great. Thank you, Marcia Guthrie and Shirley.
From OCSD.
Yes.
And Steph Wald is here, environmental alternate.
Oh, thank you, Steph. So I have 16, Andy.
Great, thank you. 16 does meet quorum. Is there anybody else? Member, voting non-member, and then we'll allow if others want to identify themselves as visitors. Okay. Anybody else want to introduce themselves at this time who hasn't had a chance yet?
Yeah, this is Willie Cunha. I just
this is visitor Patricia Wilmore from the Pastoral Wine Country Alliance.
Thank you, Patricia. And then I'm sorry, somebody else was saying hi. Willie, maybe?
Yeah, this is Willie Cunha, just saying that Steve Sitton is trying to call in, but he doesn't have adequate phone service out there today. So I don't know if he'll get in or not. I cannot vote for him or our alternates, Kevin.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Willie.
And I'm David Broadwater from Atascadero.
Thanks, David. Anyone else? Awesome. All right. Well, thanks, everyone.
Andy, I see 3 people here that I didn't hear introduced. Mark and Kylie and Mark. Can they introduce themselves, please?
I don't know. We get
This is Mark.
I think we allow folks to remain anonymous if they would like, especially.
This is Kylie Hensley from County Planning.
Thank you, Kylie.
And this is Mark Charamonti from County Utilities Division.
And Matthew Scudato, Santa Barbara County Water Agency.
Right.
Hey.
Hello?
Yeah?
Testing my audio, sorry. My name is Madeline Travis. I'm a Civic Spark Fellow with the County of SLO.
All right.
This is Jamie Hendrickson with the Atascadero Mutual Water Company.
Oh, thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Jamie. So 17, Andy.
Yeah, great. Okay, let us carry on. Thank you. So welcome everyone, and I think you all know the drill. But if you do want to speak up, you can unmute, or if it gets wild, then we'll do a chat and just say you'd like to speak, and then I'll call on you as you go. All right. The first item is approval of the September 2nd, 2020 meeting minutes. We did not have an October meeting, so those are the minutes. Are there any comments or changes to the September minutes?
Seeing none, I move the minutes be approved as submitted.
Thank you. Christine, motion by Christine Mulholland. Second, somebody?
I'll second. Eric Greening.
Eric Greening, second. All right. And we're going to approve by, what do you call that? We're going to assume affirmative for everyone, unless you speak otherwise to abstain or say no. So first, any no's? All right. And does anybody want to record an abstention? Noting you don't have to abstain if you weren't at the last meeting, but you are welcome to if that's your preference. I see Charles.
Recording an abstention. This is Desi Lance, Grover Beach. I was not present at the last meeting.
All right. So Desi abstains. Charles abstains. Anybody else? Okay.
Okay,
Motion
great.
carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. The item here is election of a vice chair. It seems particularly critical because I didn't know my status. Thankfully, it looks like I'll be around, but still, the vice chair role, Eric Greening stepped up for that when we were still live and in person, and he doesn't feel like he'd be able to host an online by Zoom. Just, you never know what the technology is, the challenges are there. So so we would like a new vice chair, and I'm opening up for nominations, and with the added information that we did ahead of time, check in with Ray Dienzo to see if he would be willing to serve that role. So he would, if so nominated, or we could entertain other nominations.
As a grateful Eric Greening, I will nominate Ray Dienzo and hope his equipment and connection are reliable. If he thinks they are, they probably are. So I will happily nominate Ray Dienzo.
Great. Thank you. Is there a second?
I second the
This
nomination.
is Shirley. I'll second.
I did too, so I don't know. Did Tom
Was
Gray
that
or
Tom?
Shirley?
Tom Gray, I saw Tom's hand up first. Thank you. And Ray, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I will gladly accept and serve.
Okay, terrific. So we have a motion and a second for Ray Dienzo to serve as the vice chair for WRAC. Any discussion? Okay. Brendan, do we need a roll call vote for this? Or can we do affirmation as well?
That's a great question. Oh, I don't know that off the top of my head.
All right, well, let's do roll call, make sure we don't screw it up.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. District 1?
Yes.
District 2?
Yes.
Okay, just to check, no agriculture at large has joined us. 1. Agriculture, or excuse me, development at large. I don't think so. Okay. Christine Mulholland for environmental.
Yes.
Eric Greening.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and David Chipping, Environmental at Large.
Yes.
Okay, Coastal San Luis RCD, Linda.
Yes. Yes.
Atascadero Mutual Water Company.
Yes.
And just to check here, California Men's Colony, Camp Slow, County Farm Bureau. Brent, I do not see Steve. And Brent has left, so he will be absent for this vote. Cuesta College, Golden State Water, Shannon San Juan, I don't believe Steve has joined.
I'm filling in for Steve. Steve can't join, so yes.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Didn't see you
You
there.
bet.
Apologize. Estrella El Pomar Creston Water District.
Yes.
Thank you, Hillary. City of Arroyo Grande. Okay. City of Atascadero.
Yes.
Thank you. City of Grover Beach.
Yes.
Thank you. City of Morro Bay. I think I saw Marlies. Okay. City of Paso Robles. Nope. City of Pismo Beach.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you. And City of San Luis Obispo.
Yes.
Thank you. Avila Beach CSD. Cambria CSD.
Yes.
Is that allowed?
Yes.
Okay. Heritage Ranch CSD. Okay. Los Osos CSD. I saw Ron.
Did we hear from Ron on Munns?
Ron, I can't hear you. If you would put it in the chat, I'll check that. Napomo CSD, Craig.
Yes.
Thank you. Oceano CSD, Shirley.
Yes.
Thank you. San Miguel CSD. San Simeon CSD. I don't see them. Templeton CSD. Jeff. Jeff, you may have to put it in the chat. Oh, great, I heard you. Thank you. All right, and I see Ron, I got your vote in the chat as a yes. All right, so.
You missed more work out there. You didn't. Hey, Brendan, this is Brent at Farm Bureau. I got cut off. I'm a yes as well.
Thank you very much, Brent. I'll get that updated. Appreciate everyone's flexibility there, and so carries.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. And thank you, Ray, for serving in that role. All right. Our next item is the agenda item number 3, consider recommendations related to the state water project. I have here Courtney is going to introduce this item, or somebody else. Oh, there.
Yes. Courtney, I
Great.
just gave you presenter. Let me know if you have an issue.
Okay. Hopefully that's looking okay.
Is it better to run it as a, there you go.
This looks great, Courtney.
Okay. All right. Technology is working. Okay. First, good afternoon, everyone. Courtney Howard, County Public Works, Water Resources Division Manager. First, I wanted to say thank you for your time and considering today's recommendations related to state water. With all the immediate concerns and issues facing us today, it's certainly challenging and a big ask to think and decide now about whether to invest in state water infrastructure given an uncertain future. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to consider all this.
Courtney, I'm sorry, could I just say one thing real quick? I'm going to mute everybody. And so for the callers, those who are phone only, it is *6 to unmute. I'm gonna mute everybody. And for those who are on phone only, it's *6 to unmute. Thanks.
All right, so the decision about whether to participate in the planning and design phase for the big one. I'll provide some background information before getting into the specifics of the recommendation. The WRAC may also wish to form an ad hoc subcommittee to participate in the water management tools study that we're working on with Central Coast Water Authority, CCWA for short. And building on the overview presentations we provided back in March and June. So if there's details related to the basics of state water that you want me to review, let me know that too. So the state's been working on defining a Delta conveyance project to bypass the Delta since the project was first implemented, and reducing reliance on the rivers and levees of the Delta is important for state water recipients because of the operational restrictions that limit south of Delta pumping, even when storm flows are available to divert for use. The current design they're looking at includes building a 30 to 40 mile tunnel from modernized intake facilities on the Sacramento River just south of the city and conveying it directly to a store base south of the Delta. The current cost estimate, once the project is financed, bonded, is about $255 an acre foot per year, which is based on the district's 25,000 acre feet a year allocation. So that's the way they've used the costing proportion, is based on south of Delta contractors' allocations. It's also important to consider operational flexibility in looking at this, or multiple ways to convey the water. When you look at risks to the existing system they rely on, associated with changing weather patterns and impacts to water quality, associated with any extreme sea level rise that may be in the future, or any potential levee failures in a seismic event. So those are some other considerations for why they're looking at the Delta Conveyance project. Translating that to our local benefits analysis, the state contractors group did kind of some modeling. And so I looked at that in terms of what it means locally. And it comes out, if you look at the long-term average and current kind of trends on how things have been trending in terms of reliability, to about 3,000 acre feet a year benefit, or about 12% more reliable on average. Now, they also looked at the various ways in which the state water project could be impacted on a specific case basis. For example, wet years versus dry years, or a complete levee failure, or very extreme sea level rise. So depending on which type of future you wanted to look at specifically to see what the benefit of the Delta Conveyance project was, it kind of resulted in a range of benefits. So I wanted to provide that too. So depending on which type of future year it is, could be less or more reliable if participating in the Delta Conveyance project. This is the current schedule they have provided, really moving into the CEQA phase and operational permitting phase, and finalizing a lot of the design details over the next 4 years. Contractors are being asked to advance funds for this phase to get it to construction, at which point the contractors would be then credited for the advance, and it would be wrapped up into the bonding for construction and financed over time. Most of the contractors are also going to their boards this month, like we are. We have the option to fund only the first 2 of the 4 years, which is helpful because a lot could happen in 2 years, and we could, if we do participate, we can reconsider at that time as well. So why would the district want to keep the door open and commit this funding for the preliminary phase? And the staff, we need to make a recommendation to the board one way or the other. And so in talking about it, these were kind of the three main factors that led us to recommending investing in it, at least for now, through this preliminary efforts phase the next 2 years. One is preserving reliability for our local communities into the future. Two, updating our studies and taking that time to really understand whether or not state water is going to be one of the supplies that helps meet our local needs. We may also want to look at how participating in the DCP could put us in a better position for reinvestment in local resiliency projects. So I'll go through each of these and why we thought they were important factors in the decision. The fact that our local needs for state water have been less than our full allocation of 25,000 acre-feet a year means that it's been more reliable for us through the wet and dry years. In contrast, other contractors in the state have come to depend on state water and are hit harder when allocations are less than 100%. State water was important during the drought when local supplies were stressed. Viewpoints on the appropriateness of moving water so far from one place to another aside, it is helpful to have a supply source from a more productive watershed in the north. It has been beneficial to our needs locally. As a reminder, these are the communities that are reliant on state water to varying degrees, and it includes our county emergency service facilities where 100% of the normal supply is from state water. So that's important as we're looking at this decision in the context of whether or not the district, decides whether or not to transfer it long-term or even permanently to relieve the tax roll. So if we didn't have the unsubscribed allocation and we didn't have the DCP, it may be more impactful to the local communities that intend to keep state water as a part of their portfolio going forward. So that's one of the factors we looked at in whether or not to recommend participating. The other factor is we've got a lot of studies going on. We've got our regional water infrastructure resiliency plan looking at emergency interties, which communities are less resilient, and how can we do those interties to meet their needs, and could it be state water that goes through those interties to serve in droughts. We're also working on the regional housing and infrastructure plan through the planning department, where do we need more housing allocations to meet state requirements. We're working on our groundwater sustainability plans, and in areas where there are sustained groundwater level declines, could state water play a role in helping relieve that? And then, of course, we also have the water management tools study, which was recently approved to move forward on. And hopefully that will help provide more information about how we can use those to make our water more secure, with or without participation in the DCP. I'm also anticipating that the water management tool study will help us consider the use of the available capacity in the pipeline, particularly in working with CCWA regarding using any of it. Again, we did a study a while back about how much more could be pushed through the pipeline. So that'll be an important part of the water management tools discussion with CCWA. And then the third consideration we were thinking of is the fact that it takes time if we were to replace or supplement state water locally in the future with a different project. It just takes time to develop those projects. And if our unsubscribed allocation becomes more valuable with the DCP benefits, then that can yield additional revenue to eventually reinvest locally in those new projects once they come to fruition and we get through the years of planning and designing that would need to happen to make those happen. That was sort of our third thought in why it might be important to continue participating at this point. And as a reminder, this was some of the programs that we see coming with the water management tools that might happen more frequently. Back in 08-09, there was a drought program where we transferred for $160 an acre foot, as well as 2013-14. So that's just an example of what might happen more frequently in the future. The specifics of the recommendation for the board regarding participation in the preliminary phase and keeping the door open includes executing a fund agreement to advance 2 years worth of the district's share of preliminary costs, and that would be $750,000 over 2 years. This is how it looks divided between the unsubscribed allocation for the district and the subcontractors over those 2 years. We look at using the revenue we got from the 08-09 and 2013-14 programs to fund that $750,000, or at least the district's unsubscribed part of it. And then we'd also help the subcontractors by having their payments go over 3 years rather than the 2 years. Some other considerations in the financial side of things is that we would again be credited back once the DCP proceeds, and then it would be wrapped into the overall cost of the project. If we decide not to participate in 2022, we think it's likely that it would get credited back to us. That's what we're seeing happen now because some of the contractors have provided additional advance funding since 2018, and so they're working through on crediting them. So we would see that happening likewise in 2022. But there is that risk that if the DCP does not proceed, then that cost wouldn't be recoverable. So that's sort of the pros and cons. It seems like the project has good momentum, but again, everyone's going back to their boards this month, and we're all going to regroup and see what the outcome was. So if the board was to approve moving forward with the participation, but then everyone else didn't seem like they would, then we definitely wouldn't, do anything. We'd go back to the board and let them know things change significantly. So in summary, we're looking for whether or not you would like to recommend that the board participate in the preliminary phase via executing a funding agreement. And then also wanted to see if you wanted to form an ad hoc subcommittee to participate in the water management tool study. We anticipate the first public meeting being Monday afternoon, November 30th. So we're still working out all the details, but that would be, if you formed a subcommittee, then they could go and report back to the WRAC. Otherwise, it should be a public meeting. So you can weigh that, whether that would be beneficial for the WRAC. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Courtney. I'm going to ask a couple questions and then I'll open it up to the rest of the group for questions. And if you do want to speak, to either ask a question or make a comment, please type it in the chat just because we are a big group and I want to make sure everybody gets heard. Courtney, can you scroll back one to the recommendations? So just as a reminder to everyone, we don't have to take action. It's only one way or the other. So we could recommend that the board participate, not participate, or we make no position at all. And then Courtney, in terms of forming the ad hoc subcommittee to participate in the water management tool study, can you tell me a little bit more about what you're envisioning? Is this a group of a few people who would participate in the study, or they'd be, would they be working with others, or this is like a standalone group that would kind of follow the issue more closely and report back to WRAC?
I was thinking following it more closely and reporting back to WRAC. So people kind of assigned to attend that meeting or any other meetings. They communicate with me on how it's going. A big part of it is what are our local needs and what kind of input from the public and various stakeholders are important to have in considering how those tools could be used.
Okay, great, thank you. Let's see, so I don't miss anyone. Okay, so David Chipping, do you want to make your question or make your comment or ask your question?
Yeah, this smacks to me a little bit like the high-speed rail. The double tunnel was litigated into oblivion. And now the single tunnel itself is under threat of litigation by people who are living along the line of the pipeline. Plus, there's the issue of, for example, Trump threatening to raise the amount of water running into the federal project, and therefore the hydrological models might be nonsense if they're based on current federal outtake. So there seems to be an awful lot of unknowns in this thing, which would worry me no end, but particularly the estimated cost. I worry that this smells a lot like high-speed rail.
Yeah, they put a lot of contingency into their cost estimate because of all the uncertainty at this point in the process. I think the attachment to your staff report goes into that a little bit. If I remember, it was about 50% chance of being in that ballpark. So
Right, it had like a,
uncertainty.
yeah, 37% contingency built in or something like that.
44.
44, oh my gosh.
Yeah. If I can, Andy,
Dennis?
if I can speak, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Dennis, and then Eric Greening will follow.
Dallas Lodge District 1. I reviewed the plan last week and had some, well, concerns, much like David. A 44% contingency is awfully concerning with regards to past history of the state and projects. So I'm a little worried about that. I'm not sure if we really get that much of a benefit from this. As far as Slow County goes, I'd like to see if we can explore that a little better, a little more certainty of what the benefit is for our county. But the other thing is that they're basing the cost on our 25,000 acre feet a year, and we never get that. It would seem to me that they should be basing on what they deliver to us. But that's a relatively minor point in consideration of everything else. But the one thing I think Courtney touched on this a little bit was the South County contractors who get the 10,537 acre feet a year. I mean, they have a pipeline, and it was my understanding that that pipeline's pretty well maxed out as far as flow, and if there's any more space in that pipeline. I mean, I'd like to see if they could get more water, but maybe we can get some clarification with regards to we have full capacity now, and if we are, I don't know what the benefit would be for us to go into this, particularly considering the 44% contingency factor, which I'm really uneasy with. But those are just some of the concerns that I have, and you know, the cost of 750,000, and then I guess that's part of the 2 million. But I don't know if those costs would go up if this project cost goes up. If we can get some clarification on that, that would be helpful as well. Thank you.
Okay, I'll try to tackle those, I guess, one at a time.
Sure.
If that's what you want. Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
I don't have more certainty on the benefit. I took the analysis that they did and correlate it to our local, basically took the 62% average that we had been getting and their analysis of how much more reliable it would be. So that translated to about 3,000 acre feet a year on average when they ran the models. And then they looked at, you know, what if all the levees failed? Then maybe you'd see more benefit. But what if, I think to David's point, there's more restrictions on, or maybe this was, may or may not have been what you were saying, but what if there's more restrictions on pumping out of the watershed at all, you know, for helping with the ecosystem, then maybe it's, maybe it's not as beneficial as on that 750 acre feet a year range. So I try to provide kind of an average estimate and then kind of a range depending on, especially on a wet or dry year. That seems to fluctuate the most based on that. And then part of taking this time to look at this in more detail with the water management tools, what other strategies the subcontractors or other local needs dictate, doing just 2 years instead of 4 years, just to kind of buy that time. I know there's a lot of uncertainty, hoping to flesh that out more in this time frame, but that's what is being weighed. With the capacity, with the cost, with the funding agreement, that's what it would be. The 2-year commitment would be in the funding agreement. We both have, DWR and the district would have to agree to anything more for that 2-year time frame. So, I think that would be unlikely that we would be willing to pay more, even if things change. They may have to catch up, though. So I could see that changing at that 2-year mark going forward. So that's another consideration, definitely the cost. The capacity, so we have rights to the capacity through contracts, with CCWA for treatment and delivery for the 4830, and then it necks down after Toro Valley gets its allocation, and then we don't have any capacity allocated to us past the Lopez turnout. And so what I'm showing here is when we did the modeling of how much more could you put through the pipeline, it showed that you could put a little, over 10,000 acre feet a year more through the northern part. And then depending on where you took more water at, whether at Lopez turnout or down in Santa Barbara County, depends. Like if Santa Barbara County had decided, oh, we don't need any more water to push through, then Lopez turnout could take more. But if Santa Barbara County wants to take some, then Lopez would get less. So that's why I said depends on negotiations there, because it depends on how much more capacity Central Coast Water Authority would want to use. And again, that's a part of the scope for the water management tools study. And I think, was that all the questions?
That sound like we covered it?
You touched on it pretty well, Courtney. The main thing, the no capacity past the Lopez turnout. And I think it would be unlikely that everyone, the contractors south of there would want less water, but you never know, I guess. But it would seem that they would need to have a larger pipe, would they not, from Lopez going south if they wanted to use for more demand? I don't know other way how they can convey that.
So between the Lopez turnout and Santa Barbara County, there is additional capacity. I'd have to go back to that study to see how much you could get down to Santa Barbara County. I want to say it was around 5,000, 6,000 acre feet a year more. And so that would be part of the negotiations. Is we have zero capacity past Lopez turnout, but is there a water for capacity exchange we could do? So those are all the concepts that would be explored in the water management tool study.
All right, thank you. All right, we're going to have Eric Greening next, and then I saw Charles's hand up, I think, and then we'll go to the callers who want to unmute and
yes, I guess I'll start with my cost question. Obviously, the contingencies are eye-opening, but does the cost figure even contemplate the added cost of bond repayment, given, as David has compared it with the high-speed rail, given that bond issues, which then have to be repaid out of the general fund over a long period of time with interest, bonding adds to the cost. Was that added to the capital cost? It looks like you put up the slide with the operating cost, the acre feet per year, and that's different. But in terms of the capital cost, the estimated capital cost of the project, did that include bond repayment?
So that is our estimated capital cost per year per acre foot. So
you mean it incorporates capital and operations?
Yes.
I mean, I saw a price tag for the project itself of what was it, 16 billion or whatever, but that didn't look as if it would incorporate bond repayment, much less change orders or any of that. Anyway, my other question on the seismic modeling, was it based on a slip, strike, quake, or a thrust, or both, or if a thrust, how shallow? And I would just observe that saturated alluvium moves like jello. You can shake a bowl, but the jello is quivering an awful lot more than the bowl.
Yes, I maybe wrongly put my faith in the modelers to pick the appropriate, geology and to incorporate into the model, but I can definitely research that more.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Eric.
I'm very skeptical of this too. In terms of spending with local funding as stretched as it is, and with the lack of likelihood of the state funding any large projects anytime soon, I would have a hard time approving the $750,000 unless someone came up with a much more convincing argument than I've heard at this point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Sorry,
Eric.
one thing I wanted to address too was the contractors, the participating contractors are paying for whatever gets bonded. So I just wanted to make that clear. It wasn't a general fund issue.
Well, they're all local governments and they're all struggling.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Okay. That's definitely a big factor that all the boards will be weighing as they're considering this.
Okay. Thank you. So Charles, and then we'll do phone calls, and then Hillary.
Yes, thank you, Andy. This is a rather parochial question. So if I understand the staff report correctly, the district, as it's referred to, is the county-wide water conservation and resource district. That's being asked to enter into this agreement. But the real participants from a financial perspective are the subcontracting agencies that you listed on one of the slides and on page 37, I think, of your, or page 20 of your report. In other words, that's Shandon, Morro Bay, CMC, et cetera, et cetera. The other agencies that are all part of this body here are not involved in any way, shape, or form financially, is my question. And the source of funding that you're using for this, that you described as being some 2014 money from something, would the expenditure of those kind of funds to support this study be taking away in any way, shape, or form from the non-participating agencies in the county?
Okay, I'm going to tackle the first question. So it's both these subcontractors, they pay for the $10,537, and then countywide taxpayers pay for the $14,463. And that's why I'm involving the WRAC in weighing in on this too. So the subcontractors have weighed in, and now because it's countywide taxpayer funds, that's why I'm also asking the WRAC to weigh in.
So countywide taxpayers would essentially be helping to pay for this, regardless of whether they lived in a district or in a water provider area that was not participating?
Correct.
Okay, so yes. In other words, us non-participating agencies or areas do have a financial interest in this, is what you're telling me?
Yes.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And
glad I asked the question then.
Yeah. And then going back to, one of our thoughts of keeping the door open is, how do we balance reliability for those subcontractors while we're also trying to relieve district-wide taxpayer obligation? So that's, in essence, what we're kind of weighing.
Okay, because based on my question and your answer, I would be hard-pressed to tell my community why I should vote yes on this. So unless I'm missing something, and I'd like you, so my inclination would be that for my entity, I should vote no, unless you can provide me a better rationale as to how this would benefit my community in particular, or at least not cost it for no benefit received.
Yeah. I didn't answer one of your other questions, and that was about how this would be funded. So back in 08, 09, 13, 14, we were able to sell our unused state water allocation under a drought emergency program. And so that revenue is what we were thinking would make sense to reinvest in the state water project to increase its reliability. And we keep the door open while we figure out how to relieve the taxpayer obligation. So in essence, communities that don't benefit from state water, other than the water that goes to our emergency services facilities, then could be relieved of that. And then wouldn't, that wouldn't be a part of it anymore. So the kind of a paying now to benefit later, and try to get that equity issue addressed. And I'm sorry, what was your community specifically?
City of Atascadero, of course, we're serviced by the Atascadero Mutual Water Company, but we have, we're in a very low priority basin. We have no water issue. And so I don't want to detract from other agencies who need this in any way. My thought had been that if we are not a financial participant, then I don't want to get in their way. But if we're a financial participant in any way, shape, or form, but not a beneficiary, that makes it harder to say yes to.
All right, thank you, Charles. Is there anybody who's on the phone who doesn't have access to chat who would like to just unmute and speak up? To unmute, you would do *6. Anyone?
Hey, Courtney, this is Jeff English with Templeton. Can you I have the same concerns that Charles Barbeau has from Atascadero, which is the benefit to those agencies and non-state water participants. So certainly some better water reliability for the state water contractors in our county could have some benefit to non-participating agencies. Maybe you can explore that a little bit more, because that's my concern as well.
So there's different kind of scenarios. One I'm thinking about is the Atascadero, but out in the Paso Basin, if there's water available, is there a way to safely, I know this is very controversial, use that water somehow to address the declines? If we can put the unsubscribed allocation to use, and part of whether or not we use state water for addressing local needs will depend on how reliable it is. So we may want to look at it with and without the DCP. And then if we can find ways to put it to use and have the beneficiaries take on that unsubscribed allocation, and they might be more apt to do that if it's more reliable, which means, DCP participation, and then we could get it off the tax roll for those that don't see it as a way to address their needs. And so that's what this 2-year window would kind of buy us, keeping the door open to having that reliability so that it's more valuable to those that might want to use it. And at the same time, trying to find a way to get the actual beneficiaries to take on the cost of the unsubscribed allocation. And eventually we'd be credited back once the beneficiaries take on that cost. The risk, though, is if the DCP doesn't proceed. That's definitely the risk in that 2-year window.
All right, let's go on to Hillary and then Linda Chipping.
Thanks, Andy. This is Hillary Graves from the Estrella El Pomar Creston Water District. I've been trying to just take a few notes here. So I have a few comments, probably not in any specific order, but so first of all, if any of us look at our property tax bills, we have been paying for the state water project forever, and we have not received any of that water. But even worse than that, our county hasn't even, except for those years that Courtney mentioned, sold our allocation, which is a financial irresponsibility, in my opinion. This project, it's different from high-speed rail, where people do tunneling projects all over the world. We're not thinking about this, I don't think, in the right way. We need to be thinking about this in terms of protecting our allocation because of the financial value that comes with that, so that even if we're not using it, we could sell it and use that money. There are a lot of people who want to, we can sell our allocation and use the money. As far as the high contingency, the contractors are being conservative in having that high contingency, which gives me a little bit of comfort. Also, I hear concern about us having a small allocation. That makes our allocation, the pumping restrictions and all those types of things that we're dealing with, make our small allocation even more valuable. And overall, I think it's a pretty small investment that we're talking about to be able to stay at the table for 2 years. At the end of that period, we'll know a lot more. And just really, I really want to just stress, I think that we need to look at this in terms of protecting our allocation. It doesn't mean that we have to take the water, but I do think it's a really valuable investment. Also, I just want to point out, this project is paid for by water users, not the general public. The money comes from selling allocations. So I think that that's important. And I don't know, I just feel like when you look at the big picture, it really is not that much money to protect our asset. And I think that's important to take into consideration. I don't know, I might not understand it completely, but I don't understand how we could be running a surplus if we, you think about it in terms of what our overdraft is, or what we estimate our overdraft is in the Paso Robles groundwater basin. How do we then have a state water project surplus? Because we could be using that to offset our overdraft. Anyways, I don't know, just it's a lot of different thoughts, I know, kind of scattered, but I think it's definitely something that we should be involved in.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. I don't think there was a question in there. Or Courtney, did you have any response before we go on?
Looks like Linda had a question.
Yes, Linda has a question. I just didn't know if there was a response to Hillary before we did that.
Oh,
I didn't hear.
Yeah, I didn't hear a question in Hillary's, but I appreciate her comments.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, Linda Chipping, please.
Well, Courtney, I think you can read what I wrote.
Yeah, I could just respond to that if you want.
Yeah, this is obviously being discussed at other agencies, and I'm wondering what the fallout has been from those.
I'll need to double check. I think most of them are going to their boards, throughout this month. Maybe 1 or 2 have gone so far, but when we go to the board on the 17th, I'll be sure to have what I know to date. But I don't think they've gone, all of them have gone yet. There are entities that have opted out, most importantly, probably CCWA. They are going after their suspended table A water. I don't know if I've ever talked to the WRAC about that. Maybe some of you know about that. you know, instead of continuing to pay for their full allocation like we did with our 25,000 acre feet a year, they turned back like 12,000 acre feet a year and stopped paying on it. So they want to get that back, and to get it back, they have to pay what they would have been paying. So they have kind of this lump sum cost to get it back, and so they are opting, from what my understanding, to pay that rather than the DCP because you know both are they need to get that water back. I think that's their preference. And then of course there's north of Delta contractors that wouldn't be participating. This is more impactful to the south of Delta contractors.
Thank you.
And Courtney, in terms of that kind of the 2-year leave the door open scenario, if we don't do that after 2 years, is there an on-ramp again where we can retroactively participate, or is that like closed forever to participate?
My understanding is that it's, you know, closed at that point, because other contractors who do want to take on more, who want more of the benefits, would absorb it at that point, and we'd have to find someone that would give it back to us, basically. I just think that's less likely. And if the board didn't participate at this point, we would probably, as staff, turn our attention to other matters. But you know, I guess that's a possibility. It's just I don't know if that will be successful.
Yeah, there's not a path there for it. And then has there been, so for the jurisdictions, the agencies that are part of this, and I'm not sure that we had anybody from WRAC actually speak out who are actually getting the state water allocation, but do they have their own meeting in order to weigh in on this? Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. They voted 4-0 with 3 abstentions.
4-0 in support of going forward. Yeah. Okay. I think so. Okay. Great. Thanks. Is there? I'm not super careful on these meetings to have WRAC members versus general public, but are there any members of the general public who would like to speak who haven't had a chance? Otherwise, we're going to close up and go to deliberation. Oh, I see Christine waving her hand. Go ahead, Christine.
Okay, thank you. Yes, I was thinking you had a whole bunch of chat people there and was waiting. And I was going to ask the same question as you. If we don't pay in now, can we buy in later? That was one of my questions. And that seems like maybe not at this point. Hillary mentioned protecting the allocation and asset. And my understanding is that this is only going to protect any added allocation that may come on because of the new project. It has nothing to do with the fact that we've been paying in forever and will continue to pay in for the asset we already have. That is already protected. It's not going anywhere. I'm more in line with those who are questioning this and the cost to the entire community of our county, all the communities, not just those who have bought in. Those of us like San Luis Obispo who voted twice during the middle of a peak drought, in the peak of a drought, I should say, no, we don't want state water. And I think that those agencies that did not want state water should not have to be paying for a new project in any way, shape, or form in order to bring more water here. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, I don't see any other comments or requests from Chip.
I do. I have a comment. Oh. I have another request, Andy.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, Linda. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Courtney, if CCWA has already opted out, isn't isn't our county a part of the CCWA? And if
No.
so, we're not?
No, we're not a part of the Central Coast Water Authority. We're our own separate contractor to the State Water Project.
Oh, okay.
We have agreements with them to treat our water at their treatment plant and operate the pipeline. But we're not a member of their agency.
All right.
Okay, great.
And who are the members of the CCWA, and why did they opt out?
The members of the CCWA are the agencies that take state water in Santa Barbara County. They are wanting to pursue the suspended Table A, the 12,000 acre feet a year that they stopped paying on, I can't remember, maybe the 80s or 90s, I'm not sure when. But that they'd have to buy it back, they'd have to pay what they should have paid all along.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Okay. Anybody else? I'm not seeing anything else. All right. So there's a potential 2 recommendations. One is in terms of should we make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors to do this, to not do this, or just not weigh in one way or the other. And then assuming that we, if we were to support it, well, I guess either way, would we want to do an ad hoc? Sorry, I'm seeing Eric Greening's comment. We're not represented on the CCWA governing board. I revisit that question. Historically, I think 30 years ago, decision makers didn't want to share in the liabilities that would accrue to the CCWA, but to contract with it instead. All right, thanks for that. A little bit of backstory. Does anybody want to make a motion one way or the other?
Can I just make a comment? This is Desi Lance, Grover Beach.
Sure, Desi.
Just to kind of record my comment, it kind of goes in line with Atascadero and some other of the agencies that don't subscribe to state water, which is similar to the city of Grover Beach. It's hard to find, the cost-benefit analysis of why it would make sense for us as a community, especially given our anticipated costs that may be associated with Central Coast Blue Project. In cohort with Pismo and AG. So I'm leaning towards those questions as well, just given the nature of what our water future looks like as a community and the fact that we don't have a state water contract. Thank you.
Thank you, Desi. Christine.
Yes, I move that we recommend the board not participate in the preliminary planning and design phase of the
Hello?
Hold on just a moment.
Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Yeah, this is Shirley from Oceana. I've been trying to talk for the last 20 minutes, and I guess you couldn't hear me.
Oh, Shirley, I
Hello?
apologize. Shirley, can you hear us?
Yeah, I could hear you. I had to hang up and redial and start all over.
Oh, yeah, maybe you weren't able to unmute. Shirley, can you hold on just 1 second and then I'll call on you to make your comments? I think Christine, I just want to make sure Christine is able to finish making her motion, which I think what it was is to consider recommending not pursuing this. Wrap it up, Christine.
That's correct. Thank you.
Okay, great. Shirley, go ahead. And then we'll look for a second if there's a
Yeah, okay. The state water subcontractors, we did support recommending that this go before the supervisors. And at this point, even with the costs, our district is willing to move forward. We want to keep our options open. I think that's really important. And as far as, selling water, that's why the water management tool study is so important, and especially important to our district. So I would just recommend that we ask the supervisors to move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so currently we have a motion to recommend not going forward. Is there a second to that?
I will second Eric Greening.
Okay, second from Eric Greening. And so we can go ahead and see if this one passes. If it does, then we're done with this. If it doesn't, then we could consider a motion going the other way. Any final deliberation?
Andy, this is Courtney. If I could clarify real quick.
Sure, Courtney.
I just wanted to make sure everyone understood. For the unsubscribed allocation, the proposed funding source is the revenue from the sales, and that revenue is currently in the flood control district reserves. So it's kind of in our savings account currently. So I just wanted to make sure everyone understood that.
Yeah, so that was a little confusing. So would the non-subscribers have any actual cost burden on this? It sounds like you're saying no, because it's
well, we wouldn't send them a bill for it. It's already, there's already money in the bank, so to speak, in our flood control district.
Which is money that we taxpayers from all over the county have helped put in there, correct? All the taxpayers have paid into that unallocated portion, as we pay all the time and have paid for state water. It's unallocated, and that money is put in there by countywide taxpayers. Is that correct?
Well, it was drought money that we got paid as almost like a rebate, it sounds like. Is that a fair way to
cost
say that?
recovery for what a portion of what countywide taxpayers had paid is now available for use for countywide purposes.
But it's only a refund on what we've already paid, so it's still our money.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay. Is everybody clear on the motion? Right. Brendan, let's go ahead and do a roll call.
Okay. Just to be clear.
Courtney, can you cycle to the recommendation, and then just that everybody's clear today? The motion is this first one, but instead of consider recommending, we're considering recommending that the board not participate. So it's this motion, but add not before participate. Okay, go ahead, Brendan.
Thank you. All right. So District 1, Dennis.
Yes.
Okay, and just to be clear, that's a yes, not recommend. I'm just making that
Correct.
clear.
Yes,
Okay.
not recommend.
Okay, I won't do that for everyone, but just clarifying the first one here. Okay, District 2, Tom.
No.
Thank you. Just to make sure no one arrived that I didn't notice, District 3, okay. There are no representatives for 4 and 5 currently. Agriculture at large, have you arrived? Kurt or George? Development at large, Greg or Tim? Okay, environmental at large, Christine.
Yes.
Environmental at large, Eric Greening.
Yes.
Environmental at large, David Chipping.
Yes.
Okay. Coastal San Luis RCD, Linda Chipping.
Yes.
Upper Salinas RCD, Michael or Tom. Okay, Atascadero Mutual Water Company.
Yes.
Okay, California Men's Colony, Camp Slow. County Farm Bureau, Brent or Steve? Brent, you're muted. Okay, Brent, if you could place your vote in the chat, that would be great, or I'll come back to you at the end. Quest College, Golden State Water, Anthony or Matthew? I know. Okay. Shandon San Juan Water District. Kevin, are you still here?
Yes. Vote no. That's no.
Thank you. Estrella El Pomar Creston Water District. Hillary?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we
No,
can hear you.
Hillary, now we
Brendan,
can't.
can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, I will not support this motion. My vote is no, because I think that we need to have as many options as possible to improve our water resiliency. Thank you.
Thank you. City of Arroyo Grande. City of Atascadero. Charles?
Yes.
City of Grover Beach.
Yes.
City of Morro Bay. Okay. City of Paso Robles. City of Pismo Beach. Marcia, are you still here? If you're on the phone, star
Can you
6.
hear me?
Yes.
Okay. You hear me?
Yes, Marcia, we can hear
Can you
you.
hear me? Okay. Okay, my vote, I'm sorry. My vote is yes.
Just to be clear, yes, not participating.
Correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you. City of San Luis Obispo.
Yes.
Avila Beach CSD. Cambria CSD. I think Ray left, so move on. Heritage Ranch. Los Osos CSD.
No.
Okay. Napomo CSD. Craig.
No.
Oceano CSD.
No.
San Miguel CSD. San Simeon CSD, and Templeton CSD. Jeff?
Can you hear me? My vote is no.
That's Jeff. So, okay, that's a no. I have a no for you. And Brent Burchett from County Farm Bureau. Are you able to vote? I see you here. I think I'll have to put abstain. What, Andy, what do you think?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I have 10 yes and 7 no.
Yeah, that's what I have.
Okay. All right. So motion carries, and as that moves forward, I think it'd be important to record the vote for the Board of Supervisors to know the mix of response for our body. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for your participation. Super important item. And we're going to move on to item 5.
Andy, did you want to consider a subcommittee for the water management tools?
Is there interest in a subcommittee, an ad hoc subcommittee to so I mean, this would just be obviously if the supervisors go forward anyway, would people be interested in serving on the subcommittee in order to advise WRAC going forward?
Actually, this is the study that we're already doing. So
I'm sorry.
It's what level of involvement the WRAC would like.
Thanks, Courtney. So anybody interested? I guess let me start with that. Is there anybody interested in serving on an ad hoc subcommittee, and then we'll see if there's others, and then that will clarify a path forward. I'm not seeing anyone. Feel free to unmute if I just don't see you.
This is Hillary Graves. I would participate in a subcommittee.
Thanks, Hillary. So far, we have a subcommittee of 1. Anybody else?
I would do it, Shirley.
Okay.
Jeff English will participate.
Okay. Thank you. This seems, strikes me as non-controversial for having this as an ad hoc advisory, an ad hoc body for WRAC. So are there any objections to establishing an ad hoc subcommittee to participate in the water management tool study consisting of Hillary Graves, Shirley, and Jeff English? Sorry, Shirley, I'm blinking on your last name. I'm not seeing any objections, so we're going to go forward with that.
Andy, this is Mark Zimmer with Golden State Water. Tony Lindstrom wasn't able to attend today, so would it be appropriate if I volunteered him to be a part of the ad hoc committee?
Sure, that would be fine.
Okay, I'd like to do that. Thank you.
You can always decline.
Okay, thanks.
Great. And Hillary, since you spoke up first, would you mind being the convener for that first
Yeah, that's fine. That I would be happy to do that. I would just ask if Brendan or someone can send me everybody's contact information.
Yeah, will do.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else on that item? Okay. Phew. Then the next item is to receive a presentation from Mark Batney of the UC Cooperative Extension on evapotranspiration.
All right, and Mark, do you want me to pull up your presentation, or do you want to share your screen?
I'll share my screen, but can you hear me? Okay, my audio shows.
We can
You
hear
can't
you.
hear me? Okay, perfect. If you'd let me share my screen, that'd be best. I made a few changes.
Okay, you should be able to do that now. All right.
Great. My internet connection's a little slow here, so I apologize. Here, I had to turn off my video. So I'll just give you a kind of a short introduction to the whole topic of evapotranspiration and why this is important when you look at our county water balance of our developed water. It's evapotranspiration is one of the biggest losses of water out of the county. So clearly it's something that we need to understand. Okay, just an outline here. I want to just explain briefly what is evapotranspiration, and then discuss a little bit about actual versus potential evapotranspiration. We use both of those measurements. And then finally talk a bit about how we estimate evapotranspiration with satellite data, and that's one of the more interesting and useful tools coming down the pipe for us. Okay, so what is evapotranspiration? Well, it's pretty simple. It's evaporation of water from the ground surface. So this can be from the bare soil or residues, whatever is on the ground, plus transpiration of water by the plants themselves. These two things together are the evapotranspiration. And as you can imagine, at different times of year, we have a wet soil surface, losing large amounts of water evaporating from that surface. Then in the middle of the summer, when the soil is dry, we lose very little from that as evaporation. You see the screen is loading very slowly here. I'll wait till you guys can see the screen. Okay, so actual evapotranspiration, how do we measure this? Well, the classic method has been to use what we call weighing lysimeters. These are essentially large flower pots that are put into a hole in the ground, and they sit upon a very precise balance. And then you can weigh changes that correspond to losses or gains of water from the system here. So here in this example, these are a couple of peach trees in this weighing lysimeter out near Fresno. This has been one of the classic tools that we've used to measure actual evapotranspiration. Clearly, this is a very expensive tool and method to develop this type of data, so it's not something that we can do very much of, but at least it gives us a basic idea for some of our principal crops. And I apologize,
It's actually coming up just fine for us, Mark, so you can keep going.
Oh, can you see the next one here? So the actual evapotranspiration, another tool that we use here is what we call a flux tower or eddy covariance station. This is a very expensive weather station that's used to measure the actual loss of water vapor from the field. Now these things, again, this is about $30,000 piece of equipment in this example for a very high quality one. So again, it's not something that we can use very often out in fields, but if we want to get the actual number, this is what we have to do. Now, another term that you'll hear is the reference evapotranspiration. Now, this is defined as the amount of evapotranspiration that's lost from a reference surface, and our reference surfaces are large areas of well-irrigated grass, which has been mowed or grazed to be kept fairly short. So this weather station in the middle of this field, this is down near Sisquoc, it's a good example of how to measure reference evapotranspiration. And this is then one of the key measures or the baseline values that we use in all of our evapotranspiration tools. The challenge is this is a fairly difficult thing to measure because finding sites that have this large area of irrigated grass is very difficult. There's not too many places in our county that have this type of situation available. The network that we have in California, operated by the Department of Water Resources, that measures reference evapotranspiration is the CIMIS network. So they have over 100 stations throughout the state for the purpose of measuring reference evapotranspiration. And on the left figure, you can see roughly where they're located. We do have several here in our county, but again, the siting of them is not ideal, providing good quality data. On the right, that is an image of the same CIMIS network. They produce daily estimates of evapotranspiration, reference evapotranspiration throughout the state on a pixel size of 1 square kilometer. So they achieve this by doing some modeling with the measured values from the weather stations and then some other input values like solar radiation, cloud cover, things like that, topography, to come up with this modeled estimate of what evapotranspiration is. And this is very useful. For example, if you have a site that's far away from any of the existing weather stations, you can go to the CIMIS network and come up with this, what they call spatial CIMIS value for that site. So that's a very useful tool for us. Now, what I've been doing locally here is installing a large number of weather stations in the county. I have a total of 20 to install. I currently have 18 of them operating right now. These weather stations measure in the same way as those CIMIS stations do, but what I do not have for any of them are the areas of irrigated grass surrounding them. So even though we are calculating the reference evapotranspiration, it's not really a valid value as compared to what the CIMIS numbers are. So we use it in the same way, and this is done commonly with many private weather stations as well. But we have to do this with the understanding that the values are a little bit off. Ideally, at a site like this, in this example, I would have a large area of irrigated grass around it, but with our water conditions here, that's simply not possible to do this for these weather stations. at the end of the presentation, I'll show you a link where you can get all the data from these stations. Okay, so how does the reference evapotranspiration change over time? Well, if we look throughout the year, it has a pattern like this. If you look at the month of the year on the bottom, one is January, of course. So then throughout the summer, July being 7, where it reaches its peak, and then goes back down to a low value in the winter. Evapotranspiration is driven by sunlight primarily. So the longer the day length and the more overhead the sun is at a given point in time, the greater the amount of evapotranspiration is going to be. Now, this data is from Spain, but we see the same pattern here in California. And then how does the reference evapotranspiration change throughout the day? Well, this chart actually shows you three things, but if you just look at the green line, that's the reference evapotranspiration for the moment here. You can see at nighttime, it's essentially zero, very little evapotranspiration occurring. And then after sunrise, it starts to increase, reaches its maximum value around midday, and then diminishes after that. Now, we can use then, how we use this reference evapotranspiration. Well, if we don't actually measure the actual transpiration, that ETA, which is a difficult and costly thing to do, we can estimate what that actual evapotranspiration is. That's called the ETC value. And we do that by developing what's called a crop coefficient, the KC. So if that KC is just simply the ratio between the estimated evapotranspiration for a crop divided by the reference evapotranspiration. So in this little chart, again, you'll see that in this example, these are table grapes in Fresno County, that in that example, the table grapes and the reference evapotranspiration had about the same value. So then you would say the crop coefficient or KC value is about 1. The peach trees in this example were quite young, so their value of reference or value for the crop coefficient was about 0.8. Because they have, which basically says they use about 80% of the water, as does the reference surface. So the whole idea, if we have a measure of this reference evapotranspiration in a region, and we know what the KC values, these crop coefficients are, with those together, we can then make informed decisions about how much to irrigate a crop. That's one of the main uses for this reference evapotranspiration value. Now, another thing that all these studies that have been done over many years have realized or figured out is that there's a rather simple and fairly straightforward relationship between the crop coefficient that we're trying to figure out and how much vegetative cover there is in a given farm field. So what do I mean by vegetative cover? Well, if you're flying over a field in an airplane and look straight down, what percentage of the field do you see as vegetation, and what percentage is then exposed bare soil or residues or something? So whatever that percentage that is active vegetation, you can then use that to calculate a crop coefficient. This is now how we develop these in many situations. And that then will be very useful for when we start using satellite data to then estimate crop coefficients. So now I'll talk about that. And there's two basic approaches to using satellite data to estimate evaporation, evaporative water use. The first one is based on a vegetation index called the NDVI. So this is basically how much or what percentage of a field is covered with vegetation. And then a second approach, which is the more newer approach, is based on the thermal characteristics of fields. So whenever water is evaporating from a field, that field is going to be cooler than, let's say, an adjacent dry field where there is very little evaporation occurring. So it's that difference in temperature is what can be used to calculate the evapotranspiration. The important thing to understand is that both of these methods, as we use them now, they need to have locally accurate reference evapotranspiration data in their calculations. That's a key input for them to use. So we will always need that good data. So the whatever we can do to improve our reference evapotranspiration data is going to improve the output values that we get from the satellite data. So I'm always trying to give a plug for trying to improve that data here locally. So here's an example. This is a public website called IRISAT. I have the link at the end. This is an example of where they're using this NDVI or vegetation index from the satellite data. And what they have done, if you look at the upper right portion of the screen there, you'll see that there's a legend. The left part of that legend shows the NDVI scale, and the right part of that legend then shows the crop coefficient that they've calculated from that NDVI value. And what I have then displayed on this map is that crop coefficient value. So the blue colors correspond to larger amounts of vegetation. The brown values correspond to very little active vegetation. And this is in a picture from Shandon taken last August out there. And I'm just going to go through, I have 3 fields marked here, 1, 2, and 3. I'll just go through each of those individually to show you then how you can use this data to understand the evaporation conditions here. So field number 1, that's a wine grape vineyard. And when you go to this website, the top chart is what it will provide. You can look back at data over the last year. So the top chart is showing the calculated crop coefficient value based on the NDVI, the vegetation index, over that time period. And you can see it's you would want to look at that line with the blue dots on it in that upper chart. And you can see the values were at their highest in the middle of the summer, and then declined in the fall, and then reached much lower values last winter, and then early this spring started to increase again. So that's all based on the satellite calculation of the crop coefficient from the vegetation index. The figure below, they take that same data, multiply that crop coefficient by the daily reference evapotranspiration, and then estimate the daily evapotranspiration of the crop itself, that ETC. And that's what each of those individual blue dots indicates, a daily amount of water loss from that system as evapotranspiration. There's a green shaded area, and that's the cumulative value over the same year as well. So these numbers are seem pretty reasonable to us. Again, reluctant. You just have to understand how they're created here. Now here, this example number 2, this is a alfalfa field north of Shandon here. Kind of see a little different patterns here. If you look at that top chart that shows the crop coefficient, and if you see sort of an up and down sawtooth pattern in that, say from about June through end of September, you know, that probably corresponds to the cuttings that were made of that alfalfa field. So this measurement method does respond to changes that are going on the ground quite accurately. And again, looking at actual daily water use from that field, you can see then the pattern in the graph on the bottom here. So now let's look at the table grape vineyard here. This is a very interesting case because it shows the limitations of using a method like this. If you look at the upper chart and look at the crop coefficient values, you can see how those line with the blue dots, how in the summer it got up to a fairly high value, and then all of a sudden in late August it just sort of drops down to almost 0. So what's going on there? If you didn't have any knowledge of what was happening in this field, you might think that somebody removed the crop and left then a bare field. But that's not the case. What happened is that they put plastic over the top of those grapes, which is commonly done in these table grape vineyards. But now if you're counting on the method that evaluates or measures how much visible vegetation there is in a field, and we cover it with plastic, that tricks the method. So this does not work very well in the situation here. So that's a big limitation of using this vegetation index-based satellite system here. And we are using lots of plastic in many crops anymore. You drive down the coast, you see lots of hoop houses and things. So this is going to be a big limitation in those systems here. However, there's another approach, this thermal satellite data for estimating ET. There's several different websites that you can go to look for more information on this. This first one that I have listed here called OpenET, it's not quite ready yet, but that's the one that we have a very large amount of expectations that it's going to provide some very useful data. So if you go to that website, you can really see what they're trying to work on here. Again, that's this thermal-based estimates of evapotranspiration on a field-by-field basis here. And there's a couple other lists there, the Cal Poly ATRC metric. That's a program that Cal Poly uses. It's not for the public to use, but rather they offer this as a service, say to a water district, for example. And then the bottom one, that WRAC, that's an interesting startup company. It's located in Northern Europe somewhere. They're taking the same satellite data and now essentially packaging it as irrigation information for farmers around the world. You have to pay them for that. It's an interesting example of what's becoming available. And here's an example then of what the satellite thermal data can look like. So here in these images, the darker the color, the more evapotranspiration is occurring. Lighter colors, it's a drier condition, less evaporation is occurring. And why I chose this image at this date in September of 2019, if you look at the table grape field that I have marked there in the middle, that area that I have with the red rectangle, that's the same field that under the other approach at this time of year showed no evaporation occurring, but the thermal approach does catch that. So if you're trying to hide your water use by covering a field in plastic, it won't hide it in this method because this thermal method does capture that temperature difference. Just to wrap up on that, there is a challenge though with the thermal method, and that's just because the time of day when the satellites pass over, they pass over around 10:30 in the morning. So the question is, do the measurements made at that time of day, are they useful for us to estimate water use, evaporation for the rest of the day? Well, the answer is for well-watered crops, say alfalfa or something, yes, that is a good estimate. But for a water-stressed crop like wine grapes, which is one of our major crops in the county, that assumption that a measurement in the morning applies to the remainder of the day doesn't always hold true. It often does not. So that's going to be something we really need to work on to make use of this data going forward. Okay, so just to wrap up here, so here's then the website that I have for the UC weather stations. Feel free to send me an email if you'd like more information on that. Here's the IRISAT website and then the OpenET. So both of those latter two are two different examples of how we can use the satellite data to get regional evapotranspiration data on a field-by-field basis. All right, well, thank you very much. And if you have any time for questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Great, thank you, Mark. We have just a minute. We're running a little bit late, but if there are any questions, now would be a good time to speak up. All right, I'm not seeing any. Thank you, Mark. It's part of our ongoing series to better understand how to use our water resources as efficiently and as effectively as possible. So it's always great to have you here, and we're enjoying following that the projects that you have going on.
I have one question for Mark, and so do these websites with the San Luis Obispo County data on them, how often is our local data updated? And you said that satellites pass each day. Just thought I'd ask that.
Yeah, so if you're looking at satellite data, there's one individual satellite passes over about every 16 days, but there's multiple satellites. So if you go to like that IRISAT website, they're taking data from, let's say, I think at least 4 different satellites. And these satellites, those rocket engineers have figured out that they want to stagger them when they go over. So in reality, you're getting data, let's say, about every 4 days for satellite imagery, if things are working well. As far as the other weather data from a weather station, like the ones that I run, you're getting a measurement every 15 minutes updated.
Okay. Cool.
Great.
All right. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, and our next item is received an update from County Environmental Health Department on the interim moratorium on the land application of treated sewage sludge slash biosolids. This is kind of a quick update in terms of scheduling, and then we'll hear more next month. Not sure who's going to share with us.
Hey, Andy, it's
Brendan.
Leslie Terry here. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Leslie.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, members of the WRAC. I'm Leslie Terry with County Environmental Health, and I am here today to provide an update regarding the county's biosolids ordinance. On Tuesday, November 17th, Environmental Health will be introducing to the County Board of Supervisors an amendment to Chapter 8.13 of the San Luis Obispo County Code to extend the interim moratorium on land application of treated sewage sludge or biosolids. This extension would go from March 31st, 2021 to March 31st, 2026, or until adoption of a permanent ordinance, whichever occurs first. The board adoption hearing is scheduled for December 15th, where they will decide on whether to adopt this extension. The main premise of the biosolids ordinance is to temporarily limit the amount of land applied biosolids to historic levels and to only allow use of the more highly treated EQ biosolids until more scientific data is available. In addition, it defines biosolids, exceptional quality biosolids, and persons regulated by the ordinance. Persons include any individual firm, association, partnership, political subdivision, government agency, municipality, public or private corporation, or any other entity whatsoever. It also requires notification of environmental health 30 days prior to the land application of biosolids equaling or exceeding 5 cubic yards. It places a cap of 1,500 cubic yards on the cumulative total of exceptional quality biosolids that can be land applied in any 12-month period. And it allows unused capacity to be carried over from the previous 12-month period. It is worth noting that biosolids excludes biosolids composted with other organic products such as green waste and sold in bulk form that meets EQ requirements. Our proposal to extend the interim ordinance expiration will provide time for the county to further assess and consider the ongoing scientific work being conducted by the State Water Resources Control Board. On July 9th, 2020, they issued an order to all publicly owned wastewater treatment plants statewide to test for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, otherwise known as PFAS, as they are potentially significant receivers of these substances. Exposure to PFAS through drinking water has become an increasing public health concern due to potential adverse human health effects coupled with their resistance to breaking down in the environment. Extending the interim ordinance also provides time for the county to consider pending biosolid updates at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. The U.S. EPA Office of the Inspector General evaluated the federal biosolids controls over the land application of sewage sludge and issued report number 19-P-0002, EPA unable to assess the impacts of hundreds of unregulated pollutants in land applied biosolids on human health and the environment on November 15, 2018. And corrective actions from this report are pending with the US EPA Office of Water, including risk assessments of pollutants that can be found in biosolids. And lastly, extending the interim ordinance as proposed will permit environmental health to consider and take into account pending regulations by the California Department of Resources, Recycling and Recovery in accordance with Senate Bill 1383 from 2016, which codifies the California Air Resources Board short-lived climate pollutant strategy and sets specific targets for reducing organic waste in landfills. And that's all I have for you today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Brendan, can you just clarify? So our goal here is today, so we're going to agendize this for a full presentation next month. Is that right?
Yeah. So what we're doing.
Want to see if there's interest in that?
Yeah, I wanted to see if there was interest. So like Leslie mentioned, there will be the introduction of the hearing in November, and the actual hearing is in December. That's correct, Leslie? Okay. And so, would the committee want to make a recommendation or receive additional information ahead of that hearing at our December meeting? It's kind of, do we want to get that, from the committee, and then also just, if there's any questions, maybe Leslie could resolve now. But that's where we're at. There is a nexus to our bylaws, to advise the Board of Supervisors concerning all policy decisions relating to water resources. So there's a connection to water resources with this topic. So that's why we're having the update at this point.
And when we talk about water resources, this specifically related to water quality. Yes.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of want to gauge the committee's, interest in it, if they want to be a recommendation or not, and we could get a full presentation.
Eric Greening, yes, I think it would be good to get a full presentation of the entire staff report that goes to the board and any supplemental material provided by others who have researched the topic. I do have one question. Is the action then only going to be whether to extend the ordinance exactly as is written, or will there be other things the board will be considering, such as how to measure the PFAs and some of the other things that have so far been kind of escaping scrutiny? Will that be part of that item, or will it be a simple extension of the ordinance?
It will be a simple extension of the ordinance at this time. We don't have any data coming out of the wastewater treatment plants yet, so it's a little bit too soon to make any sort of recommendations at this time.
Okay, so there's at least a couple of folks interested. Christine?
Yeah, I've been following this issue, and we have David Broadwater with us, who has done extensive research into this and kept some of us abreast of the developments. And at this point, since there are no changes, it's just an extension of the status quo. I'm not sure we need a full report now, but if there are any new issues that come up, possibilities of changes to the ordinance, any advancements, either in the direction the county chooses to take or in new information that comes along through new research and new understanding, then I think that we definitely need to be put in the loop.
Okay.
Yes, I would be very interested in exactly how other places are beginning to measure these pollutants that haven't previously been measured, and what we can learn from them. But I certainly would be happy to entertain action relative to the extension of the ordinance. Its main purpose, and it has succeeded at that, is to keep large cities from using our county as a dumping ground. The numerical limit and the qualitative standards have prevented that. We can't discriminate by place of origin, but we can set a numerical limit, and the existing partial moratorium has succeeded very well at that. Thank you.
And Leslie, can I ask if the for the 5-year extension, unless something is passed sooner, do they have to, I mean, are they going to wait the full 5 years, or is there some way to kind of weigh in that, you know, the beneficial use of biosolids when applied with appropriate safety measures, I would like to see that go forward. And if it can go forward in 2 years, not 5 years, that would be better. Is that language that is already in the proposed extension, or is the extension just, you know, 5 years and they can, you know, 4 years and 9 months from now can go, oh yeah, I guess we better do that?
There is language which would allow the county to take action before that 5-year period passes, depending on.
Would it compel them to do anything sooner?
I'm not sure how to answer that question. Honestly, there's nothing that would, in a sense, force them to take action. Certainly it's, you know, it's within their purview to take action earlier. You know, it kind of depends on how often they want updates from us. You know, we're just introducing this next week, so I don't have a lot of answers until we hear back what their expectations are.
Okay. Well, I guess my preference would actually be to go ahead and have a presentation with the thought that perhaps WRAC would want to weigh in with suggesting that there be a timeline of not waiting the full 5 years before considering an update to the kind of the current regulations, current ordinance.
Given the huge economic uncertainty before local government now, I would not want to shorten the deadline. I think if we wanted to encourage certain activities within the 5 years, we could, but I think the 5 years is a wise extension, just knowing the paucity of resources available to local governments at this time.
Yes, and if we can, I mean, right now, if a city wanted to do something constructive with their biosolids safely, they're not allowed. It has to leave the county. So it just seems like I would be interested in having an update in terms of you know, not having to wait the full 5 years. I also support the extension. I'm just wondering if we want to weigh in that we'd like it to be in the county work plan when it's reasonable and feasible without necessarily waiting the full 5 years. Does that make sense? I might be alone in that one.
Nothing in the language prevents it.
Well,
yeah.
we can.
Okay. Well,
I think as the chair, you can.
I was going to say that can come up in the next year or two. It doesn't have to be December right now, and pushing staff and somebody to get the reports to us in the near future. But we have 5 years, so I do think it should stay or be on our list of future agenda items, because we can, in the near future, that means less than 5 years, certainly ask for a more full presentation, I think.
Yeah, you're right. That's sensible. I appreciate that. So, because I don't think we'd object to the extension itself. It's more of, you know, what would be the next step. So yeah, let's just add that to the future agenda, unless there's anybody else who wants to hear it as a specific item next month. Okay.
And Andy,
so
you and I,
yeah, Brendan.
You and I and Leslie can discuss this too on the side. Obviously, as the chair, we set the agenda. So, yeah, we can continue to check in with Leslie too about when that might be appropriate for the context that is being discussed.
Okay, sounds good.
I wanted to be sure we are going to have a chance to weigh in on the extension itself next month.
Well, that's what I'm saying. We're not right now.
That's not what I heard. I thought we were being asked if we wanted to entertain the ability to recommend the extension to the supervisors as the WRAC.
Right, and I was hearing folks say that we didn't need to weigh in one way or the other because it's a bit of a default. You would like to be able to support the extension, Eric?
I would. I may be the
As
only
RAC.
one, but I'm not hearing objections either.
Okay. All right. I think we got some feedback. Brendan and Leslie and I can talk about the best way to move that forward. Okay, great. Well, it's almost time here, and I think those have covered the main items. The only remaining items were the ongoing updates, which are all in writing. Did anybody have anything quick they needed to bring up there? Otherwise, I would just recommend that you read it. And then I do need to make sure that I offer up public comment for items that are not on the agenda. Any members of the public want to, or the RAC members want to speak on that? All right, hearing none. If you have any future agenda items, feel free to send us an email. Brendan, did you have something else?
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight one future agenda item that was added in regards to a stormwater capture subcommittee. At the beginning of the meeting, Madeline Travis, Civic Spark Fellow with Public Works at the county, introduced herself. Her project for the Civic Spark Fellowship is related to stormwater capture, and one of the items, one of the paths is outreach. And at the December meeting, we're anticipating introducing this stormwater capture, stormwater collection subcommittee, and Madeline would learn more or share more about her specific project and related to that. So just wanted to highlight that for the December meeting. Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Brendan. Looking forward to that. Anybody else have any comments?
And
Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving.
What was that, Eric?
And I think we need more kitties to come too. Thank you for bringing your kitty to the meeting, Andy.
Oh, I forget she's even there, but yes, she does like to parade around. So, all right. Well,
Happy
thanks,
Thanksgiving,
everyone.
everybody. Happy holiday.
Great. Thanks all for being here. We'll see you next month.
Thank you. Thanks, Andy.
Bye.
Congratulations again. All right.